All right, good morning, everybody. Got something here real quick I want to share with y'all. Hope y'all had a good week last week. I hope everything's going good. I know the holidays kind of make things a little haywire and a little crazy, so hope everybody can take the time to sit back and relax and remember, remember what the main thing is. And so that being said, I'd like to go ahead and just share with y'all what God's been dealing with me lately, and that's a deal called promises. We focus on all these things that God tells us. We read these Bibles, well, God says this, God says that, but one of God's promises that we have is in Isaiah, and I'll read that here in a second. But before I do that, I'd like to go ahead and take y'all back to Genesis and Abraham, the story of Abraham and his wife Sarah, and he was the one who was going to sacrifice his son, and God was testing his faith, and then of course he sent an angel, and Abraham didn't sacrifice his son, obviously, and God blessed him and told him whenever he talked to him, he made a promise to him, and he said, I will bless you and your descendants from this point on. All your descendants, through you, all of them will be blessed. And so that was the promise, and it was well known that was the promise to Abraham. Well, fast forward a few years, Abraham has a son. His name's Isaac, and Isaac grows up and ends up doing the same thing, as far as he lies to the Philistine king that his wife is his sister, just like Abraham did the same thing. He's following in his dad's footsteps, and he's doing all these things, and he's kind of being a little shady about stuff. And because he did that, he had gotten in the way of God's plan. He got in what God had planned. God had it mapped out for him since he talked to Abraham. God had it all figured out for him. All he had to do was be obedient. But sometimes, just like with us, what we do is we tend to get ourselves in the way. We tend to be the problem more times than not, because we try to do things on our own, and we forget that God promises He's going to take care of us. And so we try to make this stuff work on our own, this life stuff. And that's what he was trying to do. Isaac was trying to do that as well. And in that culture, the Philistine culture there, it was just coincidental, I'm sure, happened to practice marital purity as well. So that meaning that if you had relationships with another married woman, adulterer, then that was bad juju. And so it was just, they shared that, not because of their faith, but it was just the culture, which was something that the Jewish people shared also. So it was a big deal that somebody in that Philistine country there had took Isaac's wife and took her as a wife, and they would have committed a huge error, and that was unacceptable in their society. And so and Isaac was afraid he was going to, that the king was going to kill him, and so he was all kinds of stuff, but he didn't trust God, that God was going to bless him. He didn't use that blessing. He didn't trust God completely, and he tried to do it on his own. But even so, even when we do the same thing, we get in the way. God's still going to work for our benefit, because he tells us he will. And so we see that after Isaac, the truth comes out. The king sees Isaac and his wife, and he knows, hey man, y'all are married. And he calls Isaac in there, and why would you do this? And he said, I was afraid you'd kill me. And so because of that, the king was kind of scared about it, and he made a decree across the land that if anyone touched him or his wife, they'd be put to death. And so from even Isaac stepping in the way of God's plan and promises, even Isaac doing that, the very next thing we see is that instead of killing him and his wife, he makes sure nobody kills them. And so now they've got all the protection in the world and safety in this land that they're living in, and they thrive. And the very next verse we read about is when Isaac plants his first harvest, his next harvest after that little meeting. He plants, and he gets 100 times more than what he planted. 100 times more. So that's the same as if you were making $20,000 a year. Now all of a sudden you're making $200,000. I could use an extra $180,000 for sure. So we see that God's blessings poured out on him, even though he got in the way. So I would like to encourage you, if you're doing the same thing, if you think you may be getting in your way, step back and ask God, hey, am I getting in the way here? What am I doing wrong? And ask him to show you how to mend it, how to take care of it, and either way, God's going to take care of you, but let's not try to get in his way and make it harder. Let's just do it. Let's just be obedient And so the verse I got is in Isaiah 41:13. It says, "For I hold you by your right hand, I, the Lord your God, and I say to you, don't be afraid, I'm here to help you." God's going to help you. Marriages, finances. I mean, it's not like it's going to be a bed of roses every time. You're not just going to pray a prayer and then all of a sudden have $1 million in your checking account. I mean, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, don't get in the way of God's plan. Don't try to do it on your own. Trust that God's going to help you. Don't be afraid. I'm here to help you. Don't be afraid about things. Trust God, and He's going to come through on His promises. He always does. God never backs down from a promise, and He never lies. He never makes a mistake. So trust God, and God's going to bless you. And I hope everybody has a good week, and keep praying for each other, and I'll talk to y'all next week.